Hey everyone, it's Jonathan, and today's episode is a re-release / complete re-edit of an episode I did 5 years ago now, back in the early days of iHeart Animation, when my cousin Sarah and I got together to break down every episode of the Cartoon Network miniseries Over the Garden Wall. I'm currently working on launching the Joncast as its own standalone podcast, and I really wanted to include this episode, and not just re-release it as is. I wanted to fully re-edit it, fix some sound issues, and add some graphics and videos, as it really is one of my favorite early podcasts that Sarah and I did, and I just felt like it really deserved a full-blown special edition sort of release. Sarah and I both love Over the Garden Wall, and Sarah in particular is very interested in the historical significance and the Americana of it all, so we really took our time to completely dissect the entire series. And then as sort of an extra bonus, I'm also including half of a vlog / review we did a couple years later talking about the pilot episode, Tome of the Unknown. That original video also included a walk to a historical cemetery near our farm. The audio on that part was really not very podcast friendly, lots of wind and crunching as we walked in the field, so I cut that part, but I do recommend watching it on YouTube if you're interested in obscure regional Iowan history. Other than that, I include the full review of Tome of the Unknown, which we recorded after we returned from that walk. I'll have that at the end following the original podcast on the full series. And before we get into it, if you are seeing this episode without any video clips, and if I'm including this warning, it will be because the original episode was blocked on YouTube and or Spotify, and I had to re-upload a simpler version. But if you're interested, I will also have a fully edited with video version on my Patreon, free to watch for all members. Not just the paid members, anyone who subscribes for free can watch this one. It took forever to re-edit this thing, and I don't want that much effort to go to waste. Okay, if you want to continue with just the audio version, let's get into Over the Garden Wall.
I'm excited about this one.
Me too.
More than usual.
There's just something about this series that I really like, and I was pleasantly surprised that you liked it as much as you did.
Kind of like the Czechoslovakian Alice or whatever.
Well, that one I would say is more of a surprise than this.
Yeah, that is surprising.
But still, either way, I really liked this one, and I'm glad you did too.
I think it's when you look at it from the perspective of history, because that's what lures me in the most. And there are so many little nuggets.
Yeah.
And it's a weird, dreamy mashup of nuggets and whimsy. And so when you have whimsy, history, humor, I mean, yeah, okay.
Okay, so for those who don't know, but if you're listening to this, I would hope you know, Over the Garden Wall is about two boys who are lost in the woods, a woods called the Unknown, which we don't know a whole lot about. You kind of discover as the series goes on.
It's from 2014, so it's not that old.
And the boys are played by Elijah Wood and Colin Dean, and I don't know a whole lot about Colin Dean. He's a lot younger. But Elijah Wood, of course, Frodo.
Colin Dean being an absolutely adorable voice on here. Now, this series was written by Patrick McHale.
I believe that's his name.
And looking at him, I'd have to dig a little bit deeper, but I feel like he's kind of the darker side of a kindred spirit for me. Like, he probably likes some darker stuff than I do, but man, the Americana in here. We'll get into it.
Well, I guess we could go episode by episode and talk about things as they come up.
I think it's a good idea. And it also, if you haven't watched this series and you don't want to know what happens, you need to stop listening, because we're going to talk it over, pick it apart, and have fun with it. And if you like zero surprises, listen, but even with as much as we're going to pick it apart, you'll probably find stuff yourself if you keep rewatching, because it's just so loaded with things.
Every time I watch this, I notice either something that I'd forgotten about or something that I didn't notice before. There's just so much hidden in this show.
In the beginning episode, something that I didn't really think about was that it starts with all of these little vignettes of characters that come up later, which are clues to what's going on. It's so layered.
It's one of those things, the beginning especially, where if you watch it again after you've already watched it,
Yes,
you'll notice a bunch of stuff.
then you'll see what the significance is, or at least some more of the significance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and while this montage is happening, you have the frog singing a song. And I think this happens in just about every episode. The frog sings the opening song. And I don't know who this is specifically, but Jack Jones, I believe is his name, is the voice of the frog. He was like a staple of like 60s and 70s variety shows, including the Carol Burnett show.
What, like doing some of the music? Or...
Yeah, just the musical.
Which his voice has that sound.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love the voice of the frog. It's great.
Which I thought maybe he was the son of a famous Welsh singer. Like, no, I don't think that's the case. He's a different Jones.
So you have the two kids, Wirt and Greg, lost in the woods, and it starts with a recurring joke with Greg trying to name his frog, except at the beginning, he's listing off the worst names that you could name the frog, which I thought was hilarious. This kid has the greatest sense of humor. I love Greg's look on life, on everything. He's just so random and funny, and I love him.
He's too calm for a normal human being, but you just have to accept it, I guess.
Yeah, he is extremely calm. With all the stuff that they go through, it doesn't really seem to affect him at all.
Mr. Magoo.
So they're wandering through the woods. Greg is leaving a candy trail, and they come across a woodsman. And this woodsman is kind of creepy-ish. He's voiced by Christopher Lloyd.
He has a great voice for that part.
Yes, perfect. And he's warning them about the beast. The beast is in the woods and they need to beware of the beast.
Trying to protect them by taking them to the mill where he is living.
Mm-hmm.
Now here's an important point. When they come up to the mill, the woodsman himself says, I found this place abandoned and I'm using it for, my purposes.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not his house. And I think that's important later on. Like, he thinks... Is it okay for me to go into the lantern right away? Or do we need to wait till the episode?
Well, he talks about the lantern a little bit. You don't get into too much right here, but whatever you want to say, go ahead.
Okay, well, right off the bat, he thinks that the soul of his daughter is in that lantern, and to keep his daughter alive, he has to keep burning the Edelwood in it. And later on, the beast is like, do you really want to go back to that empty house? So the indication would be that he doesn't realize that, like, he hasn't been back to the house to see whether his daughter is actually there. I'm wondering if
I didn't even think about that.
So I wonder if he went out looking for her, was encountered by the beast who said this is where she is, and gave him the option of looking after her, quote unquote. Because at the end, spoiler, when he goes back to his house, she just comes out of the house.
Yeah.
So this is what makes sense of, like, oh, she was probably fine the whole time. He probably went out looking for her and got totally deceived and decided, here's this gristmill, I'll use this to help keep her alive, and maybe traumatized, not wanting to go back to the empty house.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I didn't even think about that. That's a really good point.
But it's easy to miss at the beginning if you just assume, okay, this is where this guy lives, unless you're paying attention to, oh, you found this place? Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's probably put in even more dire straits, at least in his mind, when it gets wrecked, which is what is about to happen.
Yes. They encounter a beast, not the beast, because something has been following their candy trail.
Yes.
A giant, hideous wolf with glowing eyes. And this is another point where Greg's look on life it's the perfect break from what would be a terrifying scene.
Absolutely horrifying, like horror movie worthy.
The wolf he's like opening his mouth, he's like he's gonna eat him in this barrel, and Greg looks up at him. You have beautiful eyes.
Like that's going to stop him, like, you have beautiful eyes.
I just love the way he thinks about things.
Kind of makes me think of that one movie with Amy Adams. Like, it's not Ever After. It's the one for
Enchanted?
yeah, where the homeless guy comes up to him and is like, "You have a really nice smile," or something like that. You are not a very nice old man. Anyway, but no, everything's getting wrecked, and how do they fix it?
They didn't really fix it.
Well, not the gristmill, the dog.
They end up climbing up onto the roof, and the wolf bursts through the ceiling onto the roof after them. And I don't remember exactly how it happened, but the wolf ends up falling down off the roof into the wheel of the mill.
And you see, Greg had put a piece of candy in his candy trail on top of a black turtle. The black turtles can have a bad effect. The dog ate the black turtle, turned into this hideous beast, but when the dog falls, the turtle gets spewed out and he's returned to a normal dog. Which, another thing, if you're not paying attention, you'll miss that this is Beatrice's dog.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll get to who Beatrice is.
Technically, Beatrice was in this episode very briefly because she meets them right before they meet the woodsman. And
right.
She flies away.
Right. Yes.
But she has like a proper introduction in the next episode.
Okay, and so the woodsman is distressed over the state of his repurposed gristmill and sends them off to find a village to get help. He was trying to help them, but they're kind of left on their own in the dark.
Yeah. Well, we could be hard on the woodsman for that, but he's probably not in his right mind. He's kind of traumatized himself, so...
He may not have felt like he could properly keep them safe. I don't know. I don't know what all was going on there. But this is also a dreamlike state where people could question whether all of this was real or a dream, too.
Yeah.
And dreams don't have to make total sense. That's another thing. Okay. We're going to get to this later, but there is a possibility that throughout this whole thing, Greg and Wirt are basically drowning in a pond and fighting for life, and this whole dreamlike state is, I don't know, either a reality or a metaphor or some kind of purgatory, quote unquote, and that would kind of make sense as to making decisions as to whether they are going to keep hope and survive, but I totally want to think of this as its own reality as well, so... people can go crazy with however they want to interpret that.
Okay, so moving on to episode 2, which is called Hard Times at the Huskin Bee.
Husking corn, if you're wondering what a Huskin Bee is.
You have Wirt and Greg. This is where they meet Beatrice.
That's another thing. This is one of those things where it depends on whether you want to infuse meaning into it or not. Beatrice was the name of somebody who was a guide for Dante through heaven. Like in Dante's Inferno, I believe.
Oh, okay.
So she acts as their guide, and her name is Beatrice. So whether you want to make anything of that or not, you can, which would also help to back up the whole, fighting with death type thing. Anyway.
That makes sense. Even if it's not supposed to be a total meaning, it's definitely a reference. It has to be a reference to that.
Good chance.
Yeah. Anyways, Beatrice is freed from a bush, and she says that she owes them a favor.
Which, honestly, I bet she just stuck herself in that bush.
Yes, that's what I think. She wants to lead them to Adelaide, who is the good woman of the forest, or the good woman of the woods, or the something, something like that. She's supposed to be someone who can help them. So they're going to go find Adelaide, but they end up finding this village called Pottsfield. And in this village, there are lots of people dressed as pumpkins dancing around this giant pumpkin maypole thing.
We've got to talk about turkeys.
There are turkeys in this episode.
See, this episode, they infuse humor, but honestly, it's pretty dark.
Yeah.
One of the inspirations that the creator of this series used, which is also another kindred spirit type thing, were vintage postcards. So when I was
That makes perfect sense. I've seen a lot of weird vintage postcards.
So when I was researching this series, I looked up Halloween postcards, and there were not only jack-o'-lanterns, there were pumpkin people. In this episode, it's loaded with pumpkin people. And lots of black cats. You find out later, and sort of at the beginning, that there is a black cat involved. Black cats can also be said, I think, to be guides of the dead. So if you want to go for that dark reference, please, people, adopt black cats. They need love. I got too many inappropriate references. And of course, if I had 7 black cats, people might judge me. So, I don't know. I don't know. People need to... Anyway, there is a Black Cat Day that encourages adoption of black cats. Little side note. But... So, okay, great, fine. That makes sense as far as references go. But what about the turkeys? People didn't talk that much about the turkeys. In this episode, you have a turkey who's like asleep on a table, practically, in a weird way.
And he just looks at them and he makes sort of weird, jiggly, fleshy noises.
But my favorite thing, one of my favorite things in this whole series is the turkey carriage. That is so whimsical and fun. A little carriage being pulled by 2 turkeys. And people don't really want to talk about this. They don't want to infuse some weird, probably inaccurate meaning into the turkeys. Why does no one seem to care that much about the turkeys? I mean, some people, they're probably like, oh, yay, turkeys. And just, I love turkeys. They're a really cool American symbol. And America or North America, they're amazing birds. So I already came in biased. And I wasn't finding that much until I decided to Google vintage turkey postcards. Once again, all of a sudden, I'm seeing turkeys not only pulling carriages, there was one where they were driving a motor car. There are ones where they're pulling a pumpkin on wheels. One or more where there is, I think at least a couple I saw were sort of a little pumpkin carriage filled with bounty. One of them had not only bounty, but an American flag and a little boy holding a football. So he had to have gotten his imagery also from postcards for this episode. And it's almost like this interesting mashup of both Thanksgiving and Halloween postcards. So it was this little aha.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
So you could almost call this the postcard episode. Yeah, absolutely one of my favorite things, the little turkey carriage. So fun, and not a totally fresh idea from them. They were merely bringing back something really cool from like 100 years ago. There you go.
There's a lot of things in this where that's probably not a fresh idea, but they're reusing it and refreshing ideas that...
They're bringing back something cool for us to think about. This episode also, it has autumn leaves. It shows the geese flying. It has a little cricket chirping. These things that are so easy for people to take for granted, but when you focus in on them, it's so cozy. It's so autumnal. And one of his inspirations was, autumn in New England. So, yeah, make sure to relax and enjoy that part of the episode before you're maybe thoroughly creeped out.
Yeah, once they're in with the pumpkin people, they start saying some weird things, like, aren't you here a little bit too early?
Which I appreciate that instead of making it like, you are here in our grasp, it's like, this is the fun place for the dead people. What are you doing here?
Yeah, you don't quite know what they're talking about at first.
No.
But then they are, I guess, tried and sentenced. And it seems really creepy and scary at first because you have this giant pumpkin maypole thing that's alive. And all of these ribbons that they've been tying around it are acting like arms. So it's kind of like a pumpkin octopus monster thing. And he's talking like they've committed some grave sin by trespassing and crushing some pumpkins by accident.
Absolutely wonderful voice actor. he's a singer.
Chris Isaac, I believe.
He has the most wonderful bass voice.
Mm-hmm.
You come in here and you trample our crops. Yeah.
Yeah, he has a really great, memorable, perfect voice for this giant pumpkin creature.
And so they're sentenced to manual labor and have their little shackle on their feet. Even the bird, which does not make sense and is very cute.
They're supposed to be digging up this field, and they don't really know why.
But they did other work before that too, like harvesting.
Oh, that's true. But I guess their last thing of the day is digging up this field.
And Beatrice suggests that doesn't she suggest that they're digging their own graves?
Yes.
But here's another reference. Okay, before you totally find out that these are dead people, they're in Pottsfield, which, if you go into the fandom or whatever, they'll say this is a reference to Potter's Field, where poor people were buried en masse, sometimes tens of thousands of people, in fields because they couldn't afford a proper burial. So it makes sense that they're out in a field digging up unmarked graves. Yeah.
I'd heard of some of that, but I never really looked into it too much beyond just the reference to the name Potter's Field.
Which, on that note, it's actually like, this is not how the afterlife works, but but it's kind of sweet in that all these people knew who these people were. So even though the graves were unmarked and they were poor people, they're being rejoined in the afterlife, happily rejoined.
Yeah, because Greg digs up a skeleton, then they all freak out. I don't think Greg freaks out that much.
I don't know that Greg even noticed.
He was more excited about finding buried treasure, that's what he thinks the skeleton is.
So yeah, did he realize that he probably realized that he dug up a skeleton, but I think he took off before it rose up, or did he?
The pumpkin people come in and start talking to him, Wirt is freaking out. Beatrice frees them, but Wirt doesn't realize that he's free. And then Beatrice and Greg run off. Well, Wirt is still there. And that's when you find out that these skeletons that they've dug up, they're coming back to life and they're being welcomed into the community. And it's not a terrifying situation.
Dressed in vegetables.
Yes.
And he's free to go, whereas he thinks that he's being held prisoner. And they're happy to have him stay, but off they go.
And they bid them farewell. I think they say something like, "You'll join us someday."
Enoch also may have had some significance, but it's one of those things where you can put significance to Enoch or just take it as an old-timey name.
Next, we come to one of my favorite episodes. I'm sure it's one of your favorites too, because at least for the music, Schooltown Follies.
I haven't thoroughly I have not thoroughly analyzed which one is my favorite, but this has lovable elements, definitely.
This is one we reference a lot. That's why I was.
Yeah, it's very catchy.
Yes, the music is so great. So they're still wandering through the woods, and they come across a school full of animals. And this teacher, Miss Langtree, who seems to have some emotional issues.
This episode, the costuming seems very early 1900s to 19 teens. So there are all these different sort of historical settings, whereas the episodes before this seem far more 17 or 1800s. This one seems more early 1900s.
And what about the animal designs? Did you find out if they were specifically based on anything? Because I had theories, but I don't know.
I would say that too, at the latest, maybe 20s or 30s. But for Miss Langtree, she has sort of a cottage loaf hairstyle, which is, and shirt waist, like the white shirt and the skirt. So that's very early 1900s to 19 teens. And then, of course, her boyfriend that keeps coming up has one of those mustaches that would be classic to that period of time.
Well, I was wondering if the animals were partly inspired by any of those old postcards that you'd mentioned. Because I know there's animals and clothes in a lot of not just postcards, but like people would dress up taxidermied animals in little clothes.
I didn't know that. Oh my goodness. That's a little weird.
The main thing, though, I was thinking that they looked like, not exactly, but they reminded me of Beatrix Potter characters.
Oh, sure. I'd have to look again. I remember one or more of them, I think, having a little cap that looks kind of 1920s. But no, it's very whimsical because she's supposed to be teaching these animals to read and write and doing a good turn, and it's adorable.
But she's having trouble focusing because she's lamenting the fact that her boyfriend, Jimmy Brown, has disappeared.
And there's a gorilla on the loose.
Yes, there's a gorilla on the loose. It's such random problems that she's so upset about. That the problems are not equal in scope, but she's lamenting them all equally. It's just so funny. Talking about the school might get closed, Jimmy Brown's run off, there's a gorilla on the loose.
It's like if it doesn't rain, but it pours.
But the song that she's singing while she's all upset is just so catchy. And if you watch the episode, you don't get a whole lot of it, but you can find the full song on YouTube, and it is great.
It's long. And she goes through the whole alphabet and then into some numbers.
Yes. It's so great. If you haven't, you need to look up that song because it's so much fun.
Starts A is for the apple that he gave to me, but I found a worm inside. B is for beloved that I called to him before he said goodbye. Something like that. And C, see what he did to me. See what he did, that's D, did it to poor old me. Why must I be such an emotional fool? F. It's for the gentleman I thought he was. Anyway, it goes on and on.
It's a great song. I love it.
And that style, there are different musical styles throughout this, all based off of old-timey music. They didn't try and infuse pop music into this whole setting. No,
I love that they did that because it sets it apart from other more modern cartoons. It gives it its own feel. I love the musical choices in this.
Even if it's not music that you listen to on a day-to-day basis, it's a nod to a lot of Americana. And it is historically interesting, and the main people in charge of the music were the Blasting Company. And if you look them up and you read about what music inspires them or that they like, you can see those influences running throughout. And it comes from a place of knowledge and love for old things. That aside, back to Miss Langtry.
Yes. Well, meanwhile, while she's inside lamenting this, you see that there's actually a gorilla outside, a very ugly, not realistic looking gorilla. And it's chasing Greg and some other little animals around because only Wirt is inside because he's being stubborn to try and prove a point to Beatrice, who told him that he just does whatever anybody tells him to do. So he's trying to prove a point to her by sticking around and doing whatever the teacher tells him to do. And at some point, Greg makes his way inside, and it's mealtime, where you get another great song, Potatoes and Molasses.
Like if there's only one song that you remember from this, not because it's the most poetic, but because it's the most catchy, this might be the one that you go away singing.
Yes. The thought of putting molasses on potatoes sounds horrible to me, but I love this song.
It's very cute. And then you have the animals playing instruments, which the school teacher's father comes in, and this is just not...
This isn't what the school was for.
He takes away the instruments, and he seems like the bad guy, but he's really not, as you find out later.
Yes, they're all sent to bed, but they sneak out in the middle of the night, and the old man Langtry is in the woods lamenting everything that's going on. And he's wearing this giant coat. Like, he's really skinny, but he looks enormous because of this coat. That I don't know why they did that. It's one of his standout features to me. Probably
to make him look intimidating at first, but then to realize that he's not. He's really a vulnerable person. And it's all this plot exposition of like, now he has to, he's talking to himself, he has to sell these instruments to keep the school going, and then there's Jimmy Brown and the gorilla, and like they're not having a good time. But Greg has his own plan.
He says, let's go steal his stuff.
But he had a good purpose for it.
Yes.
As he gets up a benefit concert with the animals, so the animals get to keep their music and the school.
Mm-hmm. And in the middle of this concert, the gorilla attacks, but it falls over and the head falls off.
And it's Jimmy Brown.
He's been stuck inside a gorilla costume for I don't know how long, because he got a job in the circus so he could buy a wedding ring.
For Miss Langtree.
Yes.
Which, that is one of the beginning vignettes. You see a circus and you see a gorilla in the circus. So just know that that's what's happening there.
Mm-hmm.
And it all works out. This is one of the most positive episodes, really. Because, I mean, they're all positive, I guess, in their own way. But with this one, it's almost its own little story within the story where, you could almost set it apart. Where you have the dilemma and it works out and they're happy.
Mm-hmm.
Very quickly, within about 11 minutes.
Yes. Yeah, these episodes are all pretty short, but when you watch them all together, it feels like a long movie made up of shorter scenes.
Something like that. Doesn't really feel like that long of a movie either, but
probably
about 110 minutes, eh?
Yeah, probably, because there's 10 episodes.
Yeah.
So not quite 2 hours.
Oh, and did you have more to say about the episode 3?
No.
Okay. Episode 4, I have stuff to say about this one.
Yes, I think this one's called Songs of the Dark Lantern, or Song of the Dark Lantern. This one, they come to this inn.
The beast is upon me!
Yes.
They've stowed away in a cart.
Yes.
And the guy driving it is freaking out because he says the beast is upon him, which you find out later probably is totally accurate.
Mm-hmm. And they fall out of this cart at this creepy tavern, or inn, or bar, or whatever you want to call it. And it's full of people who remind me of early animated characters, especially one in particular.
Here's the catch, though. This is so colonial. Like, the building looks like a old New England building. And the way the people are dressed, presented inside of that building is very colonial. But then you get a very interesting 1930s mashup with colonial days. Or, I don't know, probably extend into maybe 1700s. If you want to distinguish. Well, I don't know if they would have had... Maybe put it at 1700s. Maybe for this one. Somewhere in there. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, the one that stands out to me the most is the main innkeeper. The one who... She looks like Betty Boop.
Yeah, her eyelashes look like Betty Boop. She looks like a colonial version of Betty Boop. She talks and sings like Betty Boop.
Mm-hmm.
I have another weird coinky-dink for you to
Okay.
go along with that, which is probably a stretch, but I kind of want it to be a thing. Okay. You know the highwayman?
Yeah.
In this scene, there is a highwayman who sings this creepy song and does this weird dance about how, basically what a bad guy he is. How he makes ends meet. Okay. Maybe this is not based off of that, but somebody was likening the highwayman's song and dance to a 1933 Betty Boop cartoon where Coco the Clown sings and dances. Okay, stick with me. The highwayman, his song sounds a little bit to me like Louis Armstrong. This is where I'm adding my own stuff, because Louis Armstrong did a song in 1928 called St. James Infirmary Blues, which has its own long history and didn't really originate with Louis Armstrong. The Highwayman singing style sounds more like Louis Armstrong to me. But this 1933 Betty Boop cartoon where it's Snow White, but weird Betty Boop Snow White. They have a part where Coco the Clown is following behind Betty Boop, frozen in a block of ice, basically sleeping like Snow White. Yes, it's weird. Snow White is weird. They rotoscoped Cab Calloway, which if you don't know who that is, he's like super famous, dancing, and he sang St. James Infirmary Blues for this cartoon. So somebody felt that The Highwayman was based off of this cartoon where Coco was dancing, which makes the connection even stronger for inspiration if you have this Betty Boop character along with this other Betty Boop character. It's weird. Maybe they didn't have that in mind, but they probably did.
I wouldn't be surprised.
It's just this very strange mashup of jazz age / cartoon influence along with 1700s. But yeah, just keep it in mind. And I have not watched the whole Betty Boop cartoon, but I have watched the scene with Cab Calloway. It is bizarre and interesting at the same time.
You could say that about a lot of Betty Boop cartoons. There's some bizarre stuff in Betty Boop.
Yeah, somebody could write a book, The Messed Up History of Betty Boop.
Anyway, the main plot of this episode is...
Who cares? Let's just talk about Betty Boop. Anyway, the main plot.
All these townspeople that are in this tavern want to know who they are. So they all introduce themselves as the butcher, the midwife, the master and apprentice. And they want to know who Wirt and Greg are. They like type of person that they are.
Which I think is really interesting. How much emphasis was put in this episode on identity? Like, that was one of the main points. And trying to figure out specifically who Wirt was, what his part in life was.
I think that's a thread that sort of is in the background of the whole series. Wirt trying to figure out, in the grand scheme of things, who he is.
First, they want to have him as the young lover because he's trying to get to Adelaide's.
Which they don't even know who Adelaide is, but they hear the name Adelaide. It's like, oh, a girl's name. He must like a girl.
And one of your favorite songs is sung at this point. It's very catchy. The one about, what is it? Little boys going courting or something.
Oh. I wouldn't say that's one of my favorite songs, but that specific line about the wedding day does pop through my head more than...
It's catchy.
Yeah.
And it's sung in a really weird style. And
yes.
Not creepy, just funny and silly.
But he's trying to explain that, no, that's not the case. He needs help. They're trying to figure out where to go. And they now think that he's a pilgrim.
He sort of is, but not really.
Yeah.
If you want to infuse lots of extra meaning into it, you could.
But somewhere in here, he mentions the woodsman and the beast, and they all freak out. And then there's a song about the beast. And you kind of get some more backstory on the beast here. And this is where you find out about the lantern. The beast turns people into trees so that they can be made into oil, so that they can be burnt in the lantern.
Which the woodsman, I don't think, realizes.
I don't know that anybody fully understands the beast or the woodsman, but now that they have this connection in their head, they think that the woodsman is the beast.
Which is not so.
So they're leaving, and meanwhile, while all this is happening, Beatrice has met a horse, Fred the horse, voiced by Fred Stoller. I don't know if they named the horse after the voice actors or what, but he has a very distinct voice. So they flee when they see the woodsman. Once they have fled, you have the beast appearing to the woodsman, and he says, be sure to keep the lantern lit, or your daughter's flame will go out.
But I think it's also in this episode where the woodsman is trying to warn the boys about, what, does the beast feed on those that lose hope? There's this really poetic type, intense warning that he's trying to give to the boys, but they get away from him. And it helps to set up this idea that the beast, I suppose he could be described as lost hope and despair personified. And it's only when people lose hope and despair that he can consume them. So it's really rather deep. And it keeps making me think of Pilgrim's Progress, because there's this part where Christian, and I think he's with Hopeful at the time, accidentally end up as prisoners in Doubting Castle under the oppression of Giant Despair. And Giant Despair has a nasty wife. I can't remember what her metaphor was. And just how they have to try and bear up and not be crushed by despair, and how they finally make their escape. And it's very, allegorical, metaphorical, but the beast makes me think of that scenario of needing to keep up hope and escape despair. Little companion reading if you want to check that out. It's very, very good. It's not the same thing, but it's from the 1600s, so kind of be loosely tied in.
It could have been something that was maybe a vague inspiration, maybe something that they had to read in school that stuck in the back of their mind.
I kind of doubt it, but I like making the connection. But it is an important point as far as the beast is concerned, because those who keep hope are not consumed by him.
So that's the end of that episode. And the next episode is called Mad Love. And here we're introduced to Quincy Endicott.
Oh, which I believe one of the tombstones in the graveyard later on, when you have a flashback, is Endicott. So that's weird.
He's voiced by John Cleese.
Which is awesome. John Cleese does such a wonderful job on this episode.
Yes.
He's just... and it's child friendly-ish, if they're not scared. But, John Cleese isn't always child friendly. but on here, he's so great.
And one thing I noticed about this, like you noticed with the turkeys in Hard Times of the Huskin Bee, there's a lot of peacocks in this episode.
Which I would think would be a reference to... probably British influence, wealthy people owning peacocks. I think that was a thing of wealthy people owning peacocks. I feel like it's one of those sounds, if you're watching a period drama and, the English people on their estate or whatever, you might hear this little in the background. If you hear that weird call, that's a peacock. I have been woken up by one at a B&B. At who knows what hour in the morning. Not sure that I'm dying to own those, but they're gorgeous. If you wake at 5:30 naturally, you'll be up before the peacock obnoxiously wakes you up. So, something to consider before purchasing your peacocks. But no, they're gorgeous. And yes, they are the turkeys of this episode. But I don't think that was a postcard reference. I think that was an English-influenced wealth reference, like estate reference.
That makes sense, because I feel like I've seen peacocks in other cartoons owned by rich people. Like, they're not like a point in the episode, but like you see them in the background.
Sure.
Like, I'm pretty sure that the wealthy family in Gravity Falls had some peacocks.
Sure, so it's a running thing.
Yeah, it must be.
But I believe it is based in reality, yes.
So they've made their way to this mansion in the middle of this forest, and they're pretending that they are the nephews of this Quincy Endicott. And I love Greg. He calls him Unky Endicott for the whole episode.
Because why not? Somebody likened this episode to having inspiration or being like The Turn of the Screw, which is an 1898 ghost story. Because as you progress, this sort of turns into a ghost story, and it's not the same thing, but maybe there was some inspiration. Who knows?
Their main goal here is that they need 2 cents to take the ferry to Adelaide. So Beatrice, I guess, is just she wants to straight up scam this guy.
Yes.
Even though it's only 2 cents, they could just ask for 2 cents.
And Wirt's not having it until he starts realizing this guy is really, really rich.
The one thing that I thought was hilarious was that once Fred the horse gets wind of this, he says, "I want to steal." Just randomly. He wants to steal.
Oh dear.
But Quincy is telling them about this is what you mentioned, the ghost story. He's seen something.
It's like there's this part of his house that he doesn't remember building, and this painting of this beautiful woman and this ghost woman, and he's in love with her, and he's afraid to go back and look in case he's crazy and it's not real. But Greg really wants to see a ghost. So meanwhile, Beatrice and Wirt are trying to find money, and the rest of them are off trying to find this ghost. And Endicott and the ghost see each other, and they both faint, and all might have been lost, except for there were still people who were conscious, who were able to connect to the dots that this was not a bad situation. These were real people.
They were two people whose houses had, I guess maybe they just kept building, and then eventually they got connected and then never knew that they were connected.
And they each had a plaque with their own name in the greenhouse. They are both tea barons. And here's another history reference which totally escaped me when I was watching it. This points to pre-Revolutionary War times. They're both tea growers, and one of them's super British. One of them is French. The Louisiana Purchase didn't happen until 1803. So it's like this nod to the presence of the French and the English in old-time America, but a not ghost love story. And a very cute one at that. So John Cleese playing that part makes even more sense under that light. I just didn't really question it when I was watching it. I didn't think that deeply.
No,
and I didn't think about the tea thing. It's like, oh, it's not coffee, it's tea.
Yeah.
And were people even growing tea in America? Probably. But if we were importing it, okay, just stop thinking, Sarah.
I mean, even if you don't know for sure, it's still an interesting connection.
Yes, and should be noted of just the French and English in old-time America.
Somewhere in here, there was a mention from Beatrice about she used to be human.
Right, they were confessing she and Wirt were confessing their dark secrets to each other. With Wirt, it's that he has a crush on a girl and he recites poetry and plays the clarinet, and she thinks maybe the poetry part's a little weird, which if you were going back to what time period she's set in, that probably wouldn't be as weird, but who knows? Anyway, she's a talking bird. And she's been turned into a bluebird because she threw a rock at a bluebird, and her whole family is bluebirds now. Now, when you look back to the opening vignette where Beatrice is with her dog, did we ever explain that the dog... Yeah, I did. When you look back to the opening vignette with Beatrice and her dog, you hear, I think, bird noises and her looking slightly agitated. So it's probably right before she threw...
Think about that.
I rewatched it. Probably right before she threw the rock and messed up their lives.
Okay. There was also a line in here where they started figuring out that there were two houses that cracked me up. I think Wirt said something about this French Rococo style is not aligned with Endicott's Georgian sensibilities.
Which is awesome that they threw that in there, showing how, well, A, talking about different types of architecture and interior design, and B, showing what a smart kid Wirt really is. He may have he has some issues going on, but he's not a bad guy, and obviously he's a good nerd.
Anyway, that's about all for this episode. You have the two T-Barons, once business competitors, now in love.
But they get the 2 cents.
Oh, yes.
And Greg throws it in the fountain and says Endicott had him pinned all wrong. He's got no sense at all. Which could, I've heard them say, okay, I've read, this sounds like it's straight out of 1950s detective show or something. I can't remember. But an interesting theory that goes along with this in the world of Over the Garden Wall theories is that in mythology, to cross the river Styx, you had to pay the ferryman, and they would actually put coins on people's eyes. I believe in real life, to help them cross over into the afterlife. I don't know if 2 cents would have been enough, or whether they both would have needed 2, or whether that's, somebody stretching the theory. But it's also brought into light that they may be denying, or you could maybe say cheating death when he gets rid of the coins. Like they're not actually going to go into the afterlife. If you want to throw that theory away, you can, but it's something interesting to think about, that they may be, if they are suspended between life and death in a pond or whatever, that this could be a denial of dying at that moment. A fight against dying.
It could be. And the ferry that they take in the next episode, I believe don't they say they sneak onto it?
Oh yeah, that's why the frog police are after them.
Yeah.
So
the next one is called Lullaby in Frogland,
which is very interesting.
The ferry that they've been trying to get to is a ferry run by frogs. And this is a very particular time period that they're set in. I don't know the exact time period, I'm sure you will, but it's the riverboats.
Riverboats, think Mark Twain, think it's going to be a broader period than this, but think maybe 1840s.
Okay.
And this riverboat that they're on is gorgeous. I want to go on a gorgeous riverboat. I've been on a riverboat, but I haven't been on one that was like really old. This one is beautifully painted. It's a paddle boat. You have all the frogs dressed in 1800s clothing. They don't seem to speak English, but they speak frog. And it's sunset time. It's just beautiful. Beautiful and bizarre at the same time. It's lovely. It's over the garden wall.
There's a lot of music here too, because the frogs have this little band and they put together their own little show or whatever.
Yes, they're trying to evade the frog police, and so they're trying to hide in the band, and that's when they discover that Greg's frog has a crooner voice and sings the frog lullaby, which basically gets them out of trouble with the cops.
I really like the song. I think it's the theme song for the show, but like the full version of it.
Really?
Pretty sure.
Oh, well, I could kind of see that. It has Over the Garden Wall in it. But the lyrics are so poetic. So if you're watching it, listen to the lyrics. Try and listen to the lyrics. I know it's going to be distracting. On your third time watching it, listen to the lyrics. And as the song ends, they're paddling off into the sunset, and it's so peaceful. And at this point, Beatrice and Wirt, probably between the last episode and this episode, they're starting to learn to appreciate each other. And Beatrice she basically doesn't want to take them to Adelaide's anymore because it's a trap.
They disembark from this ferry, and it's nighttime, and all the frogs go and hibernate in the mud, all wearing their clothes still.
Greg wants to hibernate with them, at least sleep there for the night in the mud. And they want to give Greg's frog a contract because he's such a good singer. And, looping back, these frog people, they added some really fun elements into them on the boat, because you have like a little boy frog who has a lollipop with a bug in it. And they're smoking bubble pipes. I think frogs may have been racing on water beetles. And not only is the boat beautifully painted and everything, but the whistle on the boat looks like a throwback to 1920s and maybe even 30s cartoons with the way whistles were designed. So be on the lookout for those fun elements as well. But now, on land, things don't seem to be going well for the boys anyway, because Greg thinks that he's losing his frog, and Wirt sees Beatrice fly off without them.
Yes, so they follow her, and she's going to Adelaide by herself to try and get out of this deal that she's made.
She doesn't want to hand over the boys. Adelaide's not having that.
She wants a child servant, and Adelaide is also voiced by John Cleese.
Yes. Which is great. It's better that they have that element of humor in there. So the boys break into this, and Wirt doesn't realize that... I don't think he realizes that Beatrice doesn't want to harm them anymore and just feels betrayed.
Mm-hmm.
And Adelaide tightens these ropes and captures the boys. What should be noted that I didn't notice is that Adelaide's shawl has a black widow pattern on the back of it, and the ropes are like a spider's web that the boys are being caught in. And actually one of the models for her character had extra limbs like a spider, but they thought that was too distracting and got rid of it.
Interesting.
So yeah, I never made the spider connection.
No.
It was just like she was into needlework and had a weird rope trap. She has these scissors, though, that Beatrice needs to turn her family back into people. They're shaped like a bird.
Those scissors are like a real thing, though, because I've seen them in craft stores. Like, and I don't think that they're like based on Over the Garden Wall. I think Over the Garden Wall is basing them on some old antique scissors.
Right. Probably. I don't know what year those were made. I would have to research that. But they're very cool scissors.
Mm-hmm. I thought about buying some when I saw them, but they were kind of expensive.
And the boys manage to escape. You find out later that Wirt managed to somehow get a hold of these scissors. Or was it Greg? Either way, Wirt had the scissors.
I think Wirt had them.
Yes, it's good that he had them. Who knows what Greg might have done with them if he had them.
But Beatrice opens a window, and for some reason, this makes Adelaide melt.
Yes, the fresh air.
She says the night air is poisonous. And I don't know if that's supposed to be a reference to something or what, but...
But didn't she say something about it being, it's so fresh, or something like that?
She might have.
I don't know. It just, and Beatrice is like, breathe it in, lady. So the boys should have had an idea that she was on their side, but that didn't seem to translate very well. Either that or it was just so ticked that he had been deceived to begin with. Sometimes, yeah, there's that temptation to punish people that we're mad at. Or maybe he felt like he couldn't trust her after that, I don't know. And if you notice, there's this music when she is being taken down that... A lot of this music seems to be played on an old upright piano, which has such a distinct sound. And there's this sort of scattered music where she's being taken out or where there's this point of conflict. And if you listen to the soundtrack, I believe that was the part on its own that sounds quite creepy and unsettling. But in the context of this episode, it fits perfectly and you're not paying as close of attention. It just enhances what is happening with the story.
Okay.
I think that's the one that set the dogs off barking so much.
Yeah, we were listening to this while we were watching a silent movie, and we put on the
soundtrack because the music with the silent movie was rubbish, and Over the Garden Wall was far more entertaining as far as background.
And it kind of fit with the old silent movie.
Fit very oddly fit. Anyway.
But we were watching this outside because it was the middle of summer, and it was just nicer outside at night.
You got to the creepy part of the soundtrack, and my dogs were like, "This is a bad deal. What's going on?"
Yeah, it's something about it just set them off.
Yeah, which if you do listen to it by itself, it's pretty it's unsettling, but it fits perfectly with the story here. Yeah. Then in the next episode, we move on to her sister.
Yes, this episode is The Ringing of the Bell, and it stars Tim Curry as Auntie Whispers.
If you don't know Tim Curry, he is the Prince of Ham. I don't know if he would like that. He probably would like me calling him that. I don't know. He's British, and he is just so good at playing exaggerated, overly dramatic, hammy type characters, but yet you kind of like it when he, it's not like, oh, stop it, Tim. He's so good. But with this one, he is beyond understated, but it's just, it kind of needed to be Tim Curry.
Yeah.
If they had done creepy witches' voices to go along with these witch sisters,
yeah,
it would make these episodes harder than what they already are. Like, well, this one especially, the one before it with Adelaide, that's not that bad. It could have been made probably pretty disturbing if she had been creepier than she was. But with Auntie Whispers, she is so gross. She's hideous. She's basically a monstrous looking being. She's humanoid, but she has a giant head and, I don't know, maybe 7 black nubs for teeth. And so to have her voiced by Tim Curry helps to offset how disturbing she is.
It kind of adds an element of humor, even though it's not technically humorous.
It is humorous.
I just love it.
Yeah. But, okay, and here's another thing. With this show, there are those who want to layer in, like I was reading, like when you start going down the rabbit hole of people's theories about Over the Garden Wall, I've read where they wanted to like turn Greg into a Jesus figure. Come on, people. Come on, he's a cute little boy. Let's not put things where they aren't. So people want to infuse, well, at least one writer did, infuse religious meaning into these. Strangely for me, this episode feels like the most religious. For more than one reason. Because all of a sudden we're back in colonial, what seems like Puritan times. Because of the way they are dressed. Maybe I am mistyping their period dress. Feel free to correct me and tell me what period I should be looking at. You have Auntie Whispers, which I thought this was also a very interesting choice. She has a long black cloak, which has gotten muddied, which I think is pretty historically accurate if you're wearing a long black cloak and you're going through New England dirt. And she's wearing a white cap, and her servant girl,
Lorna,
is wearing the white cap, and she has, I believe, the wide white collar. Their garb looks rather 1600s to me. And well, let's talk about how the episode unfolds, and I'll try and weave that into this. I don't know how important it is, but to me it's something that I think about.
Well, it starts out with them wandering through the woods. I think they see the woodsman again, warning them again about the beast. But the beast is, like, in the background, watching. And they find this old shack.
Didn't Greg not want to go there and Wirt did? It was like Greg was having a moment of sense where Wirt wasn't, but they went anyway. Whereas a lot of times Greg wanted to charge ahead into things, and then Greg was like, oh boy, about this. I don't know. rewatch or not. This is an episode that I could totally skip. Like, I was lying awake last night feeling creeped out over it, and we didn't even watch it last night.
I don't know that I would want to skip it just because I really like Tim Curry as Auntie Whispers.
You have a higher creepy tolerance than I do.
Anyway, they find this basket full of black turtles in the house. And if you'll remember, the black turtles
They're bad
did
news.
something to that dog.
They're bad news. Which, when I tried to figure out what's with the black turtles, the creator of this series said it's an imperfection in the quilt. Which, in my mind, is a reference to Native American art where they purposefully put in an imperfection. That might be an incorrect interpretation. Either way, it did not answer my question. I'm guessing that he put them in there because he wanted to put them in there. But,
kind of like a red herring. Just as something for people to speculate on that don't actually have any solid meaning.
He described Adelaide as a red herring, but anyway.
I could see that, because in the end, she was not important to the story, even though she was like the whole point of their quest for half the show. That makes perfect sense, yeah.
Another thing, more Americana, there's like this apple tree at the beginning of this episode, I think, and rain, and it's just more lovely New England American art.
Mm.
Anyway, on to the creepy turtles.
Yeah, so they meet this girl inside, Lorna, and she tells them that they need to hide because Auntie Whispers is coming. And Auntie Whispers comes in, I can smell the children.
Yeah, she seems so messed up.
Yes, the way she's talking, you think that she eats children.
Yes.
And then it turns out that she eats turtles.
Yes, she thinks that it's just the turtles that she's been smelling. Well, Auntie Whispers eats a turtle.
Yes, and it sort of sounds like she's kind of crunching on it, but I think she just sucked it out of its shell because the shell...
She gets rid of the shell, yeah.
Yeah, it's like a pistachio.
She orders Lorna to do one or more things.
And she talks like Lorna is ill, like there's something wrong with her. She says something like, keeping you busy is the only way to keep the evil spirits from driving you to wickedness. And the way she's talking, it sounds like she's some sort of zealot. Like Idle Hands or the Devil's Workshop, but taking it to an extreme level. Like forcing her into servitude because she's going to be evil. But it turns out she was being literal.
So here's the thing. Here's one of the things that feels so religious about this, because she, well, and you're bringing this up, and it's probably partly why it's stuck in my head. I think more than once she talks about wickedness, trying to keep you from wickedness, and probably maybe also the fact that she's like, don't lie to me, but especially the wickedness part, along with the black and white clothing. It feels very Puritan, very colonial, very religious, but at the same time, she seems like a witch because she has this bell, this magical bell, where she is controlling Lorna. Make of that what you will. But that's just, to me, that was one of the, that along with the fact that Lorna is demon possessed, that's what makes this episode feel so religious to me. There you go.
Yeah. I guess I never thought about it too closely, except for the fact of that one line that I mentioned, where she wants to keep the evil spirit from driving you to wickedness. That felt religious, but I never thought about it too much because once you realize that it was literal, like for her it wasn't like a religious thing, like she read some verse that said you got to keep busy or you're going to be evil. There's like a literal evil spirit in this girl that can come out if she's not told to do something with this magic bell.
Wirt basically sees this situation as Lorna being enslaved by a creepy people eater, and from an outside context, this really looks like she is being controlled in a very bad way, and he wants to help her escape, and she thinks that maybe this time it could be different. So Greg goes where he shouldn't, or where he should, and disrupts Auntie Whispers. And it looks like they're in major trouble with Auntie Whispers. But she's really just trying to protect them.
Mm-hmm.
And the frog eats the magic bell.
They help her escape, and like you said, Auntie Whispers has been disrupted.
But she tries to stop her with the bell, and she doesn't have the bell anymore. All of a sudden, the bell is in the frog.
But the thing that, at least for me, is hilarious is the way she says, "No."
Yes. Also, Greg's line, where I think Auntie Whispers wants to know what they're doing there, and Greg is like, "We've come to burgle your turts."
Yes. Greg has so many good lines. I love that kid.
So they think that they're doing a great thing, escaping, and this is the part where I needed to look away.
Yeah, I think Auntie Whisper says something like, "She will devour you." And it turns out that Lorna is the one who eats people, not Auntie Whispers.
Because she's possessed of an evil spirit, and she turns into this horrible demon beast.
And like you said, the frog ate the bell. So they ring the bell inside the frog, and they say to her, "Go away and never come back." And apparently that's all that needed to happen, because
basically telling the evil spirit to go away.
Yes. So it flies away, and she's free. And I was thinking, why didn't Auntie Whispers try that? Maybe she didn't think about it.
I'm guessing. Let's just assume that this was not a codependent situation. Auntie Whispers is sad, though, that she's not needed anymore.
Yes.
But at the same time, I think she's nice enough that if she had thought of it, she would have helped her to begin with, instead of having that whole situation.
Yeah.
This is another thing where at the beginning, you have a little vignette of Lorna in, you probably call it a crypt, but it's probably not a crypt, of very meticulously stacked bones.
Yeah, I saw that. It reminded me of that place in
I think there's more
Italy or France or
I think
someplace.
there's more than one place like that. And there are references to, like, before they try to escape, I think Auntie asking her, "Did you finish, or I want you to finish stacking or sorting the bones?"
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's very dark.
Yes.
And if you think back to the vignette at the beginning, there were a lot of bones. Like, what are they, next to a highway? Like, how long have they been here? How many people has she eaten here? This is it looked like she took out a village. So that's really dark. Yeah, no, if I were to skip one episode, it would be this episode. And if you're showing this to children, first off, you need to be careful which children you show this series to, period. But be very careful about sharing this episode. This cartoon is almost like for people in their 20s. I don't know. Starting age 17. I don't know. But no, Lorna is thankful to Auntie Whispers for taking care of her, I believe. And it's like they're family, even though they're not family. And Lorna stays with her. And they're happy. So at this point, maybe Lorna is the caregiver? I don't know. Auntie Whispers looks pretty old.
And when they're leaving, she says that they need to beware of her sister Adelaide.
A little late, but thanks.
So now they're lost in the woods again, and the beast is watching and kind of taunting the woodsman as well. And I think that's where that one ends. Then we get to the next episode called Babes in the Wood. This is another great one. I like the music. There's a lot of references to old animation in here. Wirt
is basically starting to give up hope, but Greg hasn't. And Greg, at some point, starts to feel like, oh, he needs to figure out how to fix this. And so it's like in his dream, he's trying to figure out what to do. He's looking for guidance.
It starts out they're boating down the river, and you have this fish that is fishing in the background.
Which is a recurring thing, which does not, like, it's probably, who knows, maybe that's a postcard too.
It could be. It probably is. That does seem like something that would be on an old postcard. But I like the fact that it looked kind of disturbed at them when they should be the ones being disturbed by
I
this
didn't notice
fishing.
that.
But you also have the beast singing in the background. And I don't know if we mentioned it at the beginning.
We haven't yet.
But the beast is voiced by an opera singer.
Samuel Ramey.
Yes.
Who, okay, just pat them on the back for getting Samuel Ramey to play a character for this cartoon. Like, oh my goodness, this man is one of the best.
He has a great voice. Perfect for this character.
I feel like I have seen him on PBS or something.
Probably.
And he's, you know, he's not at 3 tenor level of where everybody's going to know about him, but he's worth knowing about, and he was just, I'm proud of them for getting this guy to play this character. This was wonderful.
Yes. I love when the beast is singing in the background. You don't really know it's him right away, but I love his voice just in the background.
But there's also, in the beginning episode, you have the woodsman sort of talking about the beast and how he goes through the woods singing his mournful song. And so they start out the reference early, but Samuel Ramey has a lovely speaking voice as well as an operatic singing voice. So rich, so lovely. And yes, I will stop getting excited about that at the moment and move on. But I'm so happy about that. And there was another operatic voice in this episode.
Yes.
I don't know who it was, but it was a woman.
I wrote it down. Deborah Voigt.
Where's she from? Know anything?
I don't know what else she would have played other than just being in operas.
I meant country, but that's okay.
I didn't write that down.
But talk about gathering all kinds of people to sing for this. Yeah. That was another thing. The Blasting Company, there's a song in here where they had to have been influenced by another famous singer. We'll get to that.
Well, at this point, I think they come to land, and this is where Wirt is pretty much starting to lose hope. He's blaming Greg for getting them into this mess, and I think Greg has a line here that says something like, "You can do anything if you set your mind to it." That's what the old people say. So Wirt tells Greg to figure out what to do, and they go to sleep under a tree, and this is where you have all the references to old animation.
Which somebody said that this was, I don't know if all of them were creepy. Honestly, you're probably going to be far less creeped out watching this episode than a lot of the original 1930s cartoons. 1930s cartoons can be, there's something unsettling about a lot of what went down then. This one, they kept a lot of it pretty cute. Weird, very weird.
Yes.
Like you have floating heads with wings that come to take Greg's spirit off to Dreamland. Somewhere he ends up in like a little magical donkey cart, which was cute.
And there's lots of old-ish sounding music here. Another catchy song, "Everything is Nice and Fine."
Which was very interesting how they did that, because it has that I'm not going to classify it as big band, but old jazz band style, but it was like they got all their little child voice actors to sing the song, not perfectly, but in that style. And it was a very interesting choice.
Yeah, it added something more to it than if
it had been totally perfect.
Yeah.
It was like, I don't know. And
it felt more true to the era they were going for.
Maybe. It's over the garden wall. They did it their way. And the old way. You like the scene with the greeting committees up in Cloud City.
It reminded me of the Munchkin Greeting Committee, or whatever you want to call them, in Wizard of Oz. Except it went on for longer. Well, maybe not longer, but it was different. But just the fact that they had so many people coming to greet the character, in this case Greg, in that case Dorothy.
I like that they had they threw in the women's greeting committee, and they made it a little fancy, like, we're the auxiliary greeting committee. And Craig wants to know if there are any more, and all of a sudden there's just this really unhappy dog with a rain cloud looking slightly crazed. It's like, well, that's enough.
I love that.
And this is very, very 1930s cartoon. Like, if you missed any other references to old cartoons, if you can't get it in this one, then you've never seen an old cartoon in your life, probably.
Yeah, no, this is just like all the animation is straight up 1930s animation.
The way they ran, the way it's just at some point, and this has its own plot line within the plot line, because there's a dilemma, there's a bad guy, and Greg defeats the bad guy because they accidentally release the North Wind.
And they kind of tie it back to the real world too, because the old North Wind is blowing, and it goes back to the real world, them under the tree shivering as the wind is picking up.
Almost like an Alice thing of how much is reality influencing the dream. And here's the part where the song for the old North Wind, not only does it sound like old jazz, but the way the blasting company sang it sounded so much like Randy Newman. Like, You've Got a Friend in Me, Randy Newman.
Yeah.
But when I tried to research it, I don't think he sang it. But I do believe that band enjoys listening to Randy Newman. And somehow they managed to make it sound so much like him that it wants to play mind games with you. So that was a thing. But yeah, you have this little cartoon fight in a cloud cottage. And Greg emerges with the North Wind in a bottle that says Old Windbag. And he, for his valiant effort, is granted a wish by... What did she call herself? Did they call her anything?
I don't remember, but she was credited as the Queen of the Clouds, I believe.
Yes. Not to be confused with the Queen of Heaven. So if you want to start making religious references, don't necessarily do that here.
Greg is wanting to... I think he wants to get Wirt, but the Queen says something like the Beast had already claimed him. And then Greg says that he knows what he wants to wish for. And I think he whispers in her ear, and then goes back to the real world under the tree, and Greg is saying to Wirt, who is still asleep, that he's sorry that he got us lost, and he leaves with the Beast.
Which this is the part where I think they want to make a Jesus connection, but please don't do that. Greg's a nice little boy trying to save his brother.
Yeah, I don't know that I would see a Jesus connection.
I think that's too much of a stretch.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem appropriate for... But just look at Greg as a good little boy who wants to help his brother. I think they even wanted to make that connection with Wirt. It's like, no.
Definitely not Wirt. I could see it more with Greg. Even though I don't see it with Greg, I could see it more for Greg than for Wirt.
Either way, he's this innocent little boy who goes off to try and make things right, even though it's not really his fault or his problem.
Yeah. So Wirt wakes up and freaks out. He ends up falling into the water, and he's rescued by Beatrice and that fish we saw at the beginning.
Good fish.
And that's the end of the episode. And then we come to Into the Unknown, which is where you find out the big twist, which I always forget is a twist because I'm so used to the story now, but the first time you watch it,
you don't know.
You realize that there's a big twist here in that these are kids from a modern world, and I don't know exactly the year. I want to guess like 80s or 90s.
I read somewhere 80s, which I would prefer that people reference it as the 80s. Like, yeah, he's running around with a cassette tape. So either he's a hipster kid or this is the 80s. But somebody said that it was similar to movies in the 80s too. The way
it wouldn't surprise me.
The way they designed it. So let's go with that.
Yeah. So it's Halloween, and Wirt has a tape that says "For Sarah," which this is the girl that he'd referenced in a previous episode as having a crush on. And this is where you find out that these clothes that they've been wearing, we never really talked about it, but they have been wearing throughout the whole series some rather strange clothes.
But the series is so strange that there's only so much you're
Yeah,
probably
I
going to
didn't
think about it.
I didn't think about it at all until we got to this episode the first time I watched it. Basically, Wirt sort of looks like he's dressed as a garden gnome with no beard, and Greg has a teapot upside down on his head. But in this episode, you find out that the reason that he's wearing an upside down teapot on his head is because he's supposed to be dressed like an elephant.
Which is probably his creative solution to a costume.
Yes, and I thought that was great because that's such a little kid thing to see a teapot and think, I could be an elephant if I put that on my head.
Mm-hmm. And Wirt was just trying to make do with, it was like a Santa hat that he cut the fluff off of, and part of a Civil War outfit, which is where his cape came from. Which you also see, this is so great, because he's standing in front of a mirror at one point with his cape blowing because he has a fan turned on himself, like he wants to look epic. And this is an aside, but I remember this comedian talking about, and this is not true for all men, but talking about how men needed women to tell them what to wear, because if it was up to men, we'd all be wearing capes. You know, how much he loved capes and being, he wanted to be able to flip it around, something like that. It was so cute, but you can edit that out if you need to, but it was, that scene made me think of that.
At some point in here, Wirt has told Greg about the tape, and Greg decides that he's going to give it to Sarah for him, and he runs off with it to deliver it.
They're sort of intercepted by these girls, which aren't mean girls. They're just regular high school girls that want to tease him about it. And that he has to hurry up because they think Jason Funderburker is going to...
Yes, he's so worried about this Jason Funderburker, who, the way he's describing it, you just assume that it's going to be this buff, muscly jock.
Football jock. And it's really awkward.
It's this tiny little guy who has a kind of nerdy, whiny voice.
and he's very awkward. Jason seems to have his own fan club. That one other girl who's like, you can hold my hand. So nobody's really left out. It's not as dramatic as Wirt thinks it is, yes. But he just has, he's insecure.
So at some point, this tape ends up in Sarah's jacket, which she still doesn't know about it. And they're trying to get it back. And there's one little part in here that it wasn't essential to the story, but there's a policeman in a car watching all these.
Well, it
kids.
Is.
Well, he does turn up later, but he's watching these kids crossing the street, and there's two kids dressed like robbers, and he uses his police microphone. He's like, "Hey, kids, you're under arrest." No, I'm just kidding. Happy Halloween.
And what was the other one? Stop running in the street. Just kidding. Happy Halloween.
I liked the policeman.
The cop is in a good mood, and he feels like having fun with the kids, which backfires later.
Yeah, I didn't really even think about it. That does backfire on him. That is kind of the reason that everything happens.
So it sets it up.
Yeah. So eventually they're going to have this party in a graveyard, and they talk about they're going to be drinking age-appropriate drinks. And this is where you see the grave that says Quincy Endicott. And I don't know that Wirt and Greg, they're sort of following and hiding. They're trying to find a way to get the tape back.
Sarah wanted him to come, but instead of coming straight out, he's trying to sneak there and get the tape back. And Greg blows his cover. It's just this silly, awkward teenage moment. It was such a teenage moment. We can see you. Funderburker's trying to tell a scary story and hold Sarah's hand. You can stop holding my hand now. And the other girl, you can hold my hand.
But eventually their party is broken up by the police, sort of. But he's kidding again.
Yeah, he's like, what is this, some kind of witches gathering? Just kidding. But they're all freaking out. And he wants them to calm down and not get hurt and not climb up on the wall, because he and Greg are climbing this wall, whereas the others, I think, have scattered in a different direction. But they're all scattering. It's an irrational, Oh, probably hyped up group Halloween setting of like, everybody run, it's the cop.
Mm-hmm.
Even though they're not in trouble.
But they end up over the wall.
And here's the thing. The whole thing of where does over the garden wall come from, you can try, like, think about it. It's not a garden wall. But the gate to the cemetery says Eternal Garden.
I didn't even notice that.
I saw a still of it. I don't know that I noticed. I may have noticed the first time that we watched it. Because we watched this series a couple of times now. But as far as I know, you can double check. But the gateway says Eternal Garden. So over the garden wall, all of a sudden is this. It's pretty dark.
Yeah.
I suppose they meant for that to be nice when they set up. If anybody has set up a cemetery that way, they probably meant for it to be nice. But it sounds rather dark, and I think that makes the most sense as far as over the garden wall.
Yeah. Well, that is a very good theory and probably true. But as far as like over the garden wall being where all the dead people are, over the garden wall, in this case, they're outside the cemetery because they leave.
Well, they had to go over the garden wall that was the Eternal Garden.
Yeah.
So either way it works.
Yeah, but I just mean like, as far as like if they're meeting dead people on their journey, they're on the outside of the cemetery at this point.
Yeah, there's room for theorizing.
Yes, there's a lot of room for theorizing.
Here's another thing that's cool. Before they fall into the pond, they are on train tracks.
Mm-hmm.
So already this train, it's not a modern train. Think about it. It was like a steam engine. So as far as hovering between life and death in the pond, it's almost like they are already in an alternate reality as soon as they hop the wall. Because it could have been, just a train left over, but that's not super likely.
Mm-hmm.
And another thing, if you're not paying attention, or if you don't know the song that is sung at this time about the train, the style of it sounds so 20s or 30s to me. It sounds so much like, say, Woody Guthrie. And there's this whole, I don't know, train hobo culture, whatever, in music back at that time. So that's another historical cultural reference. And I believe that either the Blasting Company or the creator of this series, or both of them, were into Woody Guthrie. So I think there's some of that. There has to be some of that influence coming through in that song. And I've listened to that type of music from that period. So to me, that kind of stuck to me as well. And just, yeah. But then they fall into the pond. So were they already in an alternate reality, or were they hovering between life and death in a pond? You decide.
And that's basically the end, except you pick up where the previous episode left off, with Wirt waking up after falling in this other pond, and he's now in a bluebird's nest, and he sees this bluebird and says, "Beatrice?" And she says, "You know my daughter? Where is she?" So this is Beatrice's family. And I don't know if you noticed or if you read, but Beatrice's mother is played by Shirley Jones.
Really?
Yes.
Cool. And how did he end up in that nest? Like, did she drop him off outside of the tree? It's not like she could lift him into the tree. There were so many bluebirds, maybe they dragged him in there, but that doesn't fully make sense.
Well, this fish could sit in a boat and fish, so maybe he could somehow hop away.
We may just have to accept it as part of that universe.
Yeah.
Either way, it's a very nurturing family trying to take care of Wirt, and obviously Beatrice has left him there. She has this thing of she has to be able to turn her family back into people before she's going to face them again. I don't think they feel that way about her, but she's on this quest. So, hence her family not seeing Beatrice, but being left with Wirt to take care of him.
But then Wirt leaves, and the bluebirds they're trying to tell him to wait until the storm dies down, because at this point I think it's like a blizzard. And I think she says, "You'll be no good to your brother dead." And he says, "I was never any good to him alive either." And then he leaves.
So he That's one of the things. The woodsman tried to rebuke him at the beginning, saying that he was the elder brother and that he was responsible. And that's kind of a recurring theme, kind of throughout this, of Wirt taking responsibility for taking care of Greg. And at this point, he's prepared to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think maybe there's not like intense hatred, but some animosity and agitation. They're stepbrothers, and Greg and Wirt's stepdad have, tried to convince him to join the band. Like, it doesn't sound like they're trying to do anything to hurt him or anything bad like that. It's just that he's having a hard time adjusting. I don't know. Just having a hard time with his current reality and growing up and everything. But now he does care enough about Greg and about being responsible that he's willing to go and risk his own well-being to take care of him.
Mm-hmm.
Good maturing in the story.
Yes. So now it's the final episode, titled The Unknown. And here you have the Beast making Greg run errands for him. Just random weird errands. Like, he wants him to get the sun, but it's a riddle because he gives him a teacup. So he figures out the problem by putting the teacup on a stump and then situating himself in such a way that if you sit there long enough, it'll look like the sun is setting into the teacup.
Mm-hmm. Clever.
Yes. So he's just basically giving him weird little errands like that. I'm not sure exactly
But it's
why.
like Greg never loses hope, but at the same time, he's probably going to freeze to death.
Yeah, and you can tell he's exhausted.
So at that point, I suppose the idea is for him just to freeze to death so that he can die and turn into... Because I don't know if you completely have to lose hope. You may just have to be lost. I don't know. That doesn't fully make sense to me because Greg shouldn't...
Well, maybe he's just trying to force him to do so many chores that he's going to eventually lose hope, that he's assuming that Greg will lose hope.
I don't know.
Because he doesn't really know Greg. He doesn't know how much of an eternal optimist that he is.
I don't know, but either way, he was turning into a tree, so...
Yeah, because you had that line about there's already leaves growing inside him. He spits them out. No, I was just eating leaves.
I forgot that. He's probably hungry. I know when Wirt does find Greg again, he has wood growing around him. He is becoming an Edelwood tree.
Mm-hmm.
And here's a revelation for the woodsman, because the woodsman never realized that the trees were people that he was chopping up to feed this beast of lost hope.
Mm-hmm.
So he, poor guy, is a very, very deceived character. He's a well-meaning character, but he has a lot of grief going on. When Wirt goes out searching for Greg, he and Beatrice literally run into each other.
Yeah.
In the storm.
And at some point they make their way to the mill, and to me it looks like it's kind of fixed. Like, it didn't look as in shambles as it was when they were last there.
But the woodsman was getting desperate for wood. He found the 2 sticks that he had initially tossed aside in the beginning episode. And it's like he's just trying to get by. Like he's running out of this wood. So the beast is probably even more desperate to have these boys turn into trees.
One thing that I was going to ask you, and I forgot to ask at the beginning, all this talk about the Edelwood trees. Is an Edelwood tree a thing? Is that a real plant?
I believe so.
I didn't know if it was something they made up for this, or if it was
might
a real
mean
plant.
like Whitewood or Valiant Wood or something. Can you Google it real quick? Yeah, it's kind of like an important part of the story. I might have researched that a little bit more. Find anything?
Everything that is coming up is Over the Garden Wall related.
Okay, so Edelwood trees don't seem like they're a real thing. If they are, please tell us that they are. But there's a speculation that the Edelwood trees mean noble wood trees, but there are no Edelwood trees in reality. It's for the series. Make of it what you will. But either way, the woodsman seems to be running low.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point, the woodsman is figuring out what has actually been going on, and he never meant to be chopping up trees made out of humans.
Mm-hmm.
He's not happy about this, and he doesn't want anything to happen to the boys. Where in there is he like, his daughter wouldn't have wanted this?
Well, when Wirt finds Greg, it seems like he's falling asleep, like he's succumbing to the
Yeah.
beast. And one thing we didn't mention is he's also been carrying around this rock that he's been using to say rock facts, which is basically made up facts that he thinks are funny.
Mm-hmm.
And he took it in the previous episode. He took this rock out of this old lady's garden. So now that he's basically dying, he's upset that he has stolen this rock and he's wanting Wirt to give it back for him.
Mm-hmm.
And Wirt is trying to keep him from going to sleep, and the beast says that he can put his spirit in the lantern.
I think at this point, the woodsman is probably seeming somewhat uncooperative, and the beast is probably looking for a more vulnerable lantern keeper.
Yeah. So he tells him that as long as the lamp stays lit, his soul will live on. And then, at first, it seems like he's buying this, and he says, "Wait, that's dumb." And then he's figured it out. He says, "It's almost like your soul is in the lantern." And he gives the lamp back to the woodsman, and they leave. And this is the point where the woodsman now realizes that all this time he's been tricked. And you basically realize that this is the end of their agreement or whatever, because he blows out the lantern flame.
Which took courage on his part, which wouldn't have really been possible if it hadn't been for knowing the boys and having them show what was really going on.
Mm-hmm. But then, when they're leaving, Wirt gives the scissors from Adelaide's to Beatrice, because apparently in all the confusion he had somehow been able to take them. And there was
probably
a line,
cut themselves free too.
Yeah, she's like, "Why didn't you give them to me before?" He's like, "Well, I was mad at you before."
Exactly. Exactly.
But then they end up waking up in the real world. They're in the hospital.
But I think it shows them, doesn't it show them being pulled out of the pond?
I believe so, but I think it's more like images.
And then the ride to the hospital, siren going.
Yeah, because there's that song playing. So they're back in the real world, but they still have the frog, and the frog still has the bell.
Mm-hmm.
So there's even more of a question of...
It was totally real.
Yeah.
It has to be real because they go back into the unknown, and you see that the woodsman has regained his courage to go home. He's on the front porch.
There's like a prologue where it's like a montage of all the different characters you've met.
Which the woodsman, I think, is probably the most important out of all of them.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's sitting on his porch, and all of a sudden his daughter comes out of the house. And I think really all he needed all along was the courage to go back home. And then you see... What do they have for Endicott? Are they just...
I think it was him and the other tea baron. Oh, Marguerite Grey.
Sounds like Earl Grey tea.
Yeah, so you basically get happy endings for everybody, because you get them, and then you have Beatrice with the dog that was the wolf. Mm-hmm. I think there's a little bit with Auntie Whispers and Lorna.
They're sitting at a table.
A bit at the circus. And then you get another quick little revelation all the way back to Hard Times at the Huskinby. Enoch the Giant Pumpkin Man was actually a cat.
A little black cat popped out of the top.
Yes.
Hence my reference to black cats and potentially, being thought of as, I think, guides for the dead. And but it's a very cute little black cat. So
yes. I love that. I love that they had this giant foreboding pumpkin. It was just this little kitten inside.
Yeah, if you take away whatever, if you don't layer the other meaning onto it, or even if you do, I don't know. It's an adorable cat. Yes. And it helps to make that pumpkin far less creepy to know that there was a cat in there. So...
Yeah, I loved that. So yeah, that's Over the Garden Wall.
Yes, and... who... So you have people who put all kinds of meaning into it, and the creator of it said that basically people done a pretty good job of finding all of the meanings that they had infused into it, and some that I think he said that they hadn't thought of but wish that they had. One of the things that we haven't mentioned, which is kind of an aside, is just the beginning title cards for each episode look like these really strange wood cuttings or something. And they're so old-timey and artistic and strange, almost like a tombstone or something. So for me, that's one of the most interesting things about the series aesthetically. He also, the creator, said that he got inspiration from trade cards and chromolithographs as well as the postcards in Autumn in New England and General Americana. And so I guess the overall theme, besides it just being confusing and bizarre and everything, is that there's so much... I wish, it'd be nice to have $1 for every time I've said Americana in this episode. It's one of those shows where it is a show. Watching it this time, I didn't feel this way when we watched it maybe a few years ago. Oh, it's like, it makes me want to be proud of America. Like, it makes me want to find more of the interesting history and more of the goodness and more of the coziness of America. Right now, I feel like there's this push to not be proud of where we live. And like we were discussing the other day, if every country was held to this litmus test of if they did bad things, not being proud of them, like would anybody be left besides Switzerland who could be proud of their country? And I realize that there have been injustices, but there's also this interesting past that's worth knowing about and not just being so hyper-focused on the present that we miss all the interesting things that happened in the past. And people haven't changed as much as we think they've changed. So there will be recurring themes of human behavior, good and bad, throughout our history, including the present. Anyway.
It's one of those things where you have to take the bad with the good and choose what you're going to put more focus on.
But if you do watch this cartoon, please let it inspire you to get out of the present and research the past and know more of... Really, that's one of the things. It's not just the people. The landscape in this cartoon points to the beauty of America. And, let that make you think about the diversity and beauty of America. And even if you don't agree with a single human being in the country, you can still enjoy the precious land that you live on.
Yeah.
There you go. My little sermonette. We gotta figure out some way to wrap up this podcast. Might as well do it with soapboxing.
Okay, well, I don't think I'd actually watched this before today.
Really?
I thought I had, but as we were watching, I was like, this doesn't seem familiar. And then when an alligator came out of the cornfield and started eating their car, I was like, I would have remembered an alligator coming out of the cornfield and eating their car.
You know what? I just watched it either this year or last year, and I don't know if it came up because I was listening to music from the movie or if we had talked about it. But I really enjoyed it then.
I feel like It should, if it's not on my DVD, it should have been. I can't believe I have not seen this
And
before.
honestly, I feel like I've watched it at least twice before we watched it today.
Okay.
It's short and
it's cute.
comforting. Yeah, I don't know.
Well, this was made in 2013, the year before the series. And this was the pilot. I was actually just listening to a podcast with Patrick McHale yesterday. So I was hearing about some of this stuff.
This is
kind of a coincidence that we ended up talking about this, because this was not a planned episode.
This is nuts that it's that old, but I didn't watch it when it first came out.
Mm-hmm.
So...
Well, I watched the series when it first came out, but
I mean the series, I didn't watch that when it first came out, so...
I think Sasha and I watched it soon after it came out.
Little do I realize it's been a long time since I first saw this, and I'm just blocking that out. But today is our day to rewatch the series, and this is kind of the perfect way to kick it off, with a walk to an old pioneer cemetery and watching the pilot for the show.
Yeah. The series and the pilot actually started out when I think Patrick McHale was just out of school, and he wrote up a pitch because he had an idea for a 3-season series first, which was Tome of the Unknown and what became Over the Garden Wall.
Let's explain what a tome is, because when I first watched this, I had to look it up.
Oh, it's a big book. I don't know why I know that, but I've known that because...
But is it supposed to have secrets, or is it just a big book?
Any big book, it can be a tome. But this tome does have secrets, because in the voiceover at the beginning, it says that the book contains everything that has ever been forgotten, or something like that.
Which is maybe less ambiguous than what the show turned out to be.
Yes, that idea ended up getting scrapped when they put the show together as a miniseries.
But you see so much of the flavor of the show that came afterwards in this.
Yeah. He had a lot of the ideas already that it morphed into. But yeah, like I said, he started with a series pitch, and they, at the time, this is stuff that I learned in this podcast, at the time Cartoon Network was trying to put together a film division, because I think they do some made-for-TV movies, but I think it's probably mostly the same teams that work on the shows that put those together. But I think they were trying to start an actual film division, and that ended up never happening. But they wanted him to rework this into a film, but he was like, this is too episodic, I don't think I can. And then he ended up moving on to work on Adventure Time. And then after he'd been there for a few years, they asked him to do another pitch, and he pitched this again, but as a mini-series, which they didn't make mini-series at that time. And they liked the idea.
It's kind of perfect as a mini-series.
It is, yeah. So they greenlit the pilot, and they made this first before they started work on the actual series. This was the proof of concept, and they liked this pilot enough to make the series.
And why wouldn't they? But kudos to them, because it is different.
Yeah.
It's very different. The charm is already there. And maybe the flavor of the humor is already there. But thank you for doing something different like this.
Yeah. But this short has the same cast. Elijah Wood is still Wirt. I kind of figured when we started watching, I was like, it's probably going to be a different cast, because a lot of times when studios make a pilot, they just have a temporary voice track, and they get either people that they know or people that work in the studio to just do temporary voices.
Was the bird the same voice, though?
No.
Okay.
No. That was the one big difference. The bird in the short was voiced by Natasha Leggero, and Melanie Linsky is who did her voice in the show. And I could tell right away that the voice was different, because they have very different voices. But that's the only big difference. The other two characters were the same, and then the other character that was in was a totally new character who wasn't in the series.
It was probably helpful to have that little boy's voice on there to help. sell this show.
I love his voice. He is so great.
Remind me his name again.
Colin Dean, I believe.
Okay,
I want to make sure, because I didn't write that down.
That sounds right. And
yeah.
He was just so adorable in the series, and of course is adorable and charming in the pilot. Mm-hmm. He's probably in middle school or high school now.
Probably. Time flies when...
Either way, whether you're having fun or not.
I mean, like, there's so many times where it's like, oh, I remember that kid from that thing. And then you look up, oh, they're an adult now.
With twins now. And a beard.
He's probably not that old, but he's probably at least a teenager.
He's probably getting a little shadow on the upper lip or something. I don't know. Yeah. Anyway.
I don't know if I mentioned this in the original, but this is something else that I heard on the podcast when he was talking about why they got Elijah Wood. They were auditioning so many people and nobody seemed right. And he was trying to explain to the casting director what he wanted. And he was like an Elijah Wood type voice. And the casting director said to him something like, well, why don't we just ask Elijah Wood? And he was like, he asked her, like, we can do that?
Are we fancy enough to ask Elijah Wood to do that? And Elijah Wood really loved this show.
Yeah.
So it worked out.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, that sounds like a type of reaction that one of us might have. Like, really? We're going to reach for the moon on this?
Yeah, I love that. But yeah, the point of this short is they're wandering through the woods looking for the Tome of the Unknown. And
you end up in this lovely, charming garden with a vegetable car and a vegetable man and a cat that is crying over the singing of the vegetable man.
I was wondering what was up with that cat. Why is he so sad?
I think it was just because the song was sad.
Okay. But yeah, I loved how they got there because Greg, the younger brother, he wants to find a goose for them to ride because they're walking for so long. And then he disappears. And then you hear screaming. And Wirt runs to find him. And he's screaming because he found a bunch of vegetables shaped like a car. And he says, "We're one step closer to finding a goose." Like, I don't know where he got that from, finding a vegetable car, but I love the way his strange little mind works.
It's cute. One of the things that's fun about this short is that when you listen to the soundtrack for Over the Garden Wall, you're going to hear songs that weren't in the series, and a couple of them are in this short. Now, also in the soundtrack, I don't think that you have the accompaniment on the one song. I think both of them are just the one guy singing. But when you watch this, you'll probably recognize, like, oh, that's where that's from. Mm. And the era that they basically set this pilot in is like early 1900s, from the style of his, I think his little necktie and his hat and just the way everybody was done up. Mm-hmm. And the era of the music too. I'm not sure. This song that he sings in the garden is probably an old song that has slipped through the cracks for me, and I don't know when it's from. But later on, he sings "Shine On Harvest Moon." And
that's one I even recognize, so that's
right,
a more famous one.
Right, so just think at that era. Mm-hmm. And his name is John Crops, and he's such a cute character that's just humble and kind of lonely, would like to have somebody in his life. And so they head off to the big city together, which is not a big city. It's more like a hamlet of, I don't know.
It was a gazebo with a barn nearby.
Yeah, and some of the community had gathered for music and dancing, and Potato Man was drinking out of a watering can.
But it was a flask because he was hiding it.
Yes.
I do want to mention one other thing one of
Go
my
ahead.
other favorite lines.
Go ahead.
When they're riding towards the big city, Wirt asks John Crops, "Do you have, like, internal organs?" "Well, I don't rightly know."
And then what is he like in the front? Oh, okay. Like, let's just drop this. Not gonna cut open your melon body and find out. Oh, we didn't even say the name. C.W. Stone King.
Yes, John Crops is voiced by C.W. Stone King, who, this is his only acting credit, apparently. He's actually an Australian blues artist.
Which I'm thinking is not the only person they sourced who didn't do this for a living, but was basically in a music genre that called for their
I think
voice.
in the series later, they also have a lot of musicians do voices, not just voice actors and celebrities.
And why not? So kudos to them for that too. And I mean, we probably shouldn't give away all the details because people need to go watch this 9-minute blip. But in the end, after the crows have and the turkeys have descended and been scared away, after a whole debacle with a scarecrow, John...
The scarecrow apparently is all that is keeping these people safe from being attacked by birds, because as soon as the scarecrow is gone, the birds descend.
But John Crops is so busy singing to the crowd and singing with the beautiful cabbage lady that he doesn't care about the chaos around him.
I have to mention, one of my favorite lines was when the turkeys come out of the woods. Beatrice screams, "Punch it in the face!" And Wirt says, "Oh, heck no," and drives away.
Yes.
Just his delivery on that line, "Oh, heck no."
Yeah. The way most people would feel in that situation, probably. Like, let's just go. Let's go. And so the boys and Beatrice are getting away from this chaos. And next thing you know, the birds are attacking the vehicle.
And an alligator.
And Gregory, I don't know what was up with that, but why not? Gregory runs off, and next thing you know, you have the screaming all over again. And so they're hurrying, trying to find out what's wrong. And he's found a beautiful giant goose with a ribbon around its neck, perfect for a fairy tale.
It looked like one of those geese that was, like, super popular in the 80s.
How much you want to bet it was like some throwback to his childhood?
Probably. Because I can't imagine he's that much older than we are.
Why not? Why not?
Like, we even had that pattern on, like, a little... It probably wasn't a shot glass, but it was about the size of a shot glass. I used it as, like, a little juice glass when I was a kid. It was, like, that specific goose with that ribbon, and sometimes a hat is very recognizable.
It's a beautiful goose that's probably nicer than about any goose that exists in real life. I don't know. So... they're going to go off and continue their journey, and John Crops goes back to the country with his newfound love. And one of my favorite parts is he holds his hat in front of them and gets a little kiss. And I think both the cabbage lady and the cat who was on her lap are blushing, and it's so cute and innocent and sweet. So... if you're a fan of Over the Garden Wall, check out the pilot. It's basically the shot over the bow of something good is coming.
Yeah. And it's good on its own, too. Sometimes you'll get a pilot that you can tell that it has good ideas, but it's not that standalone. Like, you kind of need more. And while this, you want more, it is a good little short by itself.
So fix the cup of hot chocolate or cider on this fall or winter day, whenever you happen to be watching it, and check out the pilot for Over the Garden Wall. It's on YouTube. It's not like you have to do anything special to find it. Tome of the Unknown.
Thanks for listening to this episode of I Heart Animation. If you like what you've heard, make sure to subscribe on your preferred podcast platform or to the I Heart Movies YouTube channel. Make sure to follow my co-hosts as well. Any relevant links will be in the description for easy access. We'll be back soon with another brand new episode, so thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
heck no.